Now that you sat down, could you please stand up and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I guess we're over here. Got them everywhere. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated now. Bellevue is blessed to be affiliated with several great financial institutions, and Sac Federal Credit Union is, as I mentioned earlier, one of Bellevue's great community-minded businesses, and we appreciate their hospitality this morning. Please welcome Peggy Waltman, the Bellevue Branch Manager of Sac Federal Credit Union.
Good morning, everybody. On behalf of Sac Federal Credit Union, our employees, our board of directors, and our members, we are proud to sponsor the Bellevue Chamber of Commerce Dignitary Breakfast. Sac Federal Credit Union has been serving the military families and veterans of Nebraska for the past 70 years. This is our 70th year we're celebrating. And we want to thank you for joining us as, as we pay tribute to those who have given so much to our country. And thank you all for coming.
For the past 13 years, we have held an essay competition for area 5th and 6th graders. The essay contest is sponsored by the University of Nebraska, Omaha Division of Continuing Studies, and is supported by the Bellevue Leader and Bellevue Public Schools. The winner of this year's essay is Gracie Hartley, a 6th grader at Two Springs Elementary. Please welcome Gracie to the podium to read her essay.
So, what is it about veterans anyway? Who are they? What did they do? They defended us, our freedom, and our rights. That's what they accomplished. But why did they fight for us? You'll know soon enough. First of all, veterans are people who have served in the armed forces. Anybody who has served in the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, the Marines, or the Coast Guard. They're all veterans. They deserve to be respected whether they are young or old. Why? Because they fought for America and were willing to sacrifice everything, even their lives, although their fellow citizens sometimes take that for granted. We should be thankful that they struggled for our freedom and made this country a better place. Every day, they might have felt alone, scared, worried, or depressed, in addition to concern for our safety at home. Sometimes they didn't choose to be in the armed forces. They were drafted. Veterans sacrificed so much, including comfort. They might have missed birthdays, graduations, holidays, or other major events in loved ones' lives. They even might have missed the birth of a child. Our veterans risked their lives, their education, their job opportunities, and their health, but their loved ones also made sacrifices. Children whose parents were in the Army may never have gotten to meet their mother or father because of loss in battle. I personally remember my older brother going into the Marines, and I always worried about him. Thankfully, he came home. Some veterans didn't get to come home at all, so why did they risk that chance? Some were inspired. Some did it out of pure patriotism. Some did it to serve America or to protect the people they love. That's why we celebrate Veterans Day.
Thank you, Gracie. I would like to welcome Molly Cowgill, Manager, DCS UNO Office, and Dr. Regina Toman, Assistant Dean, College of Public Affairs and Community Service, UNO Division of Continuing Studies, essay sponsor, to the podium.
Congratulations, Gracie. On behalf of the Division of Continuing Studies at the University of Nebraska at Omaha, thank you for your beautiful essay and your support of veterans.
I invite you to join me in prayer. Almighty God, we ask your blessing on today's events as we remember and honor the men and women of our armed forces. We're so grateful for their service and sacrifice, and the sacrifice of their families, so that we might continue to enjoy freedom. Thank you for our community and their continued support of our armed forces. We thank you for establishing and preserving our nation, and for the privilege of life and the blessings we enjoy through your graciousness. May we never take for granted your providence, protection, and grace. We ask that you would preserve us, our homes, and our nation as we rely on you. Bless this food to our use and us to your service. It's in the name of Jesus that I pray. Amen.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, mayors, senators, local officials, administrators, dignitaries. Thank you so much for including the 557th Weather Wing in your Veterans Day parade and celebration and this breakfast. As a 23-year weather officer and going to participate in an outdoor event, always get a little bit nervous on how the weather is going to be, and for some reason we tend to feel responsible for the weather that's about to happen. So when there's nice weather, people say, hey, thank you for the nice weather. They say that all the time. I take credit. I know I probably shouldn't, but I typically do, because I know full well that when January and February get here and we have 3 feet of snow, the temperature is 6 degrees out, and there's blowing wind, and you're trying to clear your driveway, no one will be thanking me for the nice weather. So, and I'll be telling you then that I work in the sales department, not production, and you need to talk to the chaplain if you're interested in production. So. Bad jokes aside, it's absolutely my honor to stand with you today to pay tribute to our men and women in uniform that support and defend the Constitution and protect America from those that wish to do us harm. On behalf of the 557th Weather Wing, I'd like to thank you for including us in today's Veterans Day Parade to pay tribute to our veterans past and present and their families, and to honor our Grand Marshal today, Colonel Ellis McClintock, United States Air Force retired. Colonel McClintock, thank you for your service and for the numerous sacrifices you've made throughout your entire life. Your story is truly inspiring and amazing, and it's absolutely no wonder why your generation is known as the greatest generation. So thank you so much for your service. I'm extremely proud to represent the 1,500 men and women that make up the 557th Weather Wing that watch over our skies, monitor the sun, measure and forecast the weather elements, and advise our Air Force, Army, and joint warfighters when weather threatens to impact critical activities and operations around the world. Since 1949, we've called Offutt Air Force Base our home, first as the Air Force Global Weather Center, then later as the Air Force Weather Agency, and now as the 557th Weather Wing. Since our beginnings on Offutt 67 years ago, our name has changed and our mission has evolved, but Bellevue and the surrounding community have always welcomed us, so much so that many of our veterans have planted roots here and have made Bellevue their permanent home. Our airmen are absolutely your airmen. They are your neighbors, your volunteers, your school volunteers, your scout leaders, and your friends. You as a community have opened your arms and your hearts to us, and for that we're eternally grateful. Today, 23 of our airmen, your airmen, are deployed throughout the world. These airmen stand guard in places like Qatar, Kuwait, Afghanistan, United Arab Emirates, Iraq, and Colombia. 13 more will depart in early 2017 to stand guard in those very same places. They serve proudly so that Americans at home can sleep well, knowing that our military is ready to defend our way of life. They are comforted in their knowledge that this community supports them and watches over their loved ones while they're gone. In closing, I want to just send a special thank you to the veterans that we have here today that have preceded us and to their families that have made huge sacrifices. Thank you for your unwavering service to your country, for your support to the men and women in currently serving in uniform, and for their sacrifices as well. You're truly remarkable. Thank you, God bless, and Godspeed.
All right, that'd be bad. Okay. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate dignitaries and to all our special guests and to friends. Thank you so much for offering us the opportunity. Gracie, that was a great speech. That was fantastic. I'm going to hire you to come and rate this. Isn't that great? After you hear mine, I think you're going to agree that we should hire her to come and write for us. Steve, thanks for going first. I was going to talk about weather. I was a weather officer for 7 years, so I know really where the weather comes from. So, Chaplain, thank you again for the great weather. So with that, let me just say that I'm truly proud to join you here today as we pay tribute to America's veterans and to honor this year's Grand Marshal to the Colonel here, Ellis McClintock. Sir, thank you. I also want to echo Steve's words. Thank you so much for your service. What you've done has paved the way for all of us, so thank you so much. Over the next few days leading up to Veterans Day, our nation will pause to honor its military veterans. This is a great opportunity each year for us to stop for a moment and just to say thanks to the veterans who have contributed so much to the preservation of this nation. And while it's easy to recognize active duty service members who are visible in our uniforms, it's the veterans who may not be wearing the uniforms that we want to pay just a special tribute to this week. Many of them have become teachers. They've become police officers, firefighters, and our neighbors. And they represent an unwavering dedication and exemplify the highest ideals of service. A veteran is someone who had a calling to serve, and I think Gracie did better than anybody else to talk about what a veteran really does. They believe in high standards, service, diligence, discipline, and loyalty. There's a bond between veterans regardless of what service they were a part of, and they take an oath, live by a code, and stand ready to fight and die for their country if that's what's required. These brothers and sisters in arms, they are a key foundation to our community. In fact, there are roughly 22 million of them who are in the United States, including 145,000 here in Nebraska. These include 12,000 World War II veterans and more than 67,000 from Korea and Vietnam, who served in Korea and Vietnam, and on 37,000 that served in the conflicts in the Middle East. Our veterans are the reason we have freedom, and it's because of them our children can truly enjoy their childhood. Their sacrifices have given us the freedom of speech, and they're the reason we can choose where and how we practice our religious beliefs and why and where able to go to the polls on Tuesday and place our votes. I think many of them are very excited about Tuesday, right? Coming up soon. They are also the torchbearers of democracy, and they're the example of what we who wear the uniform today try to emulate. So bottom line, our men and women in the uniform, past and present, have been and are the most powerful line of defense in our conflict against enemies who are set to harm us and our way of life. However, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention at least very well the backbone of our veterans, which is our families. They're the ones that give us the strength to keep the home fires burning, bore the burden while we were actually out and deployed. They keep the home going. They also make sure that our children are educated and welcome us when we return. It's their sacrifice and great deal that I'd like to pass on my sincere gratitude to all those in attendance who are spouses, who are family members today as well. And finally, I'd like to say thanks for all of you here in Nebraska. Let me get off script for just a second to talk. I've been here in Nebraska for about 18 months, and I got to tell you, you get it. I mean, Bellevue in Nebraska gets it. Yesterday, I got a chance to go to Douglas County in the state of Nebraska, starting what's called the Veterans Treatment Court. It's an amazing program. It gives veterans who are who are struggling with life, who find themselves in front of a judge, who typically would be incarcerated, they get the opportunity one more time for rehabilitation. They get a chance to go through a program, and actually at the end of their program, they get a chance to go back in front of the judge and have whatever charges that came up expunged from their record. It's incredible. This community is the same community that actually went out and fought hard to try to get a national cemetery here in the local area to serve Nebraska and western Iowa. It's the same community that got private and public funding to actually help make our veterans hospital here even better. You guys get it, and I can't thank you enough. We see it every day here at Offutt. I think you all really understand the importance of service, and I can't thank you enough for it. Really excited to see the folks drive up down the street here in uniform, all real proud, and I thank you very much for allowing us to participate in your breakfast. Thank you.
Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, Mayor Sanders, elected officials, and distinguished guests, and thank you very much for the Bellevue Chamber for putting on the breakfast this morning. I think we ought to give them a round of applause. Yeah. It's an honor to be here with you this morning representing the over 38,000 men and women of United States Strategic Command who serve around the globe, whether it's operating submarines several hundred feet below the depths of the ocean all the way to our space satellites 22,000 nautical miles above the earth. The men and women of U.S. Strategic Command are serving 24/7, 365. I'm happy to have Chief Master Sergeant Pat McMahon, who's our Command Senior Enlisted Leader with us. Chief McMahon, thanks for all that you do, and glad to have you with us as well. In 1896, the 22nd Infantry Regiment arrived on the newly built Fort Crook, and a partnership was born between the men and women who have served our great country in uniform and the men and women of Bellevue, Omaha, and the state of Nebraska, who have respected, supported, and celebrated them for over 120 years. And although this Veterans Day that we celebrate has its roots in the Armistice Day commemoration by President Wilson in 1919 and subsequently Congressional Proclamation in 1954, The public record shows that the men and women in Nebraska have stood by our U.S. military veterans from the time Fort Crook first opened its doors, and we thank you for that. We are honored that the City of Bellevue and the citizens of this wonderful community have taken the time to recognize those of us here today who serve in uniform. We are honored by that, and we thank you for that. But more importantly than that, we stand with you, shoulder to shoulder, in recognizing those veterans, those military servants who came before us, who paved the way for us and fought for the liberties and freedoms that we all now enjoy. Men and women like Colonel McClintock, and sir, it's an honor to have you with us this morning, and so many hundreds of thousands of others like him, from the earliest days of the American Revolution to those who have proudly served and sacrificed in Iraq and Afghanistan, whenever and wherever their nation called. We who serve in uniform today are humbled by your honor, but we are honored by the service of those who came before us and on whose shoulders we stand and upon whose blood, sweat, and tears we swear our commitment to uphold their sacrifice always. Over the course of our great history, our great America has produced the kinds of sons and daughters whose love of country, whose unbridled patriotism, whose commitment and willingness to serve and sacrifice, and yes, even die for the ideals and principles of peace and liberty and freedom and justice are unrivaled by any country or any people on the face of this earth. And while that concept, the thought of the selflessness and bravery of the men and women who have come before us, makes us swell with pride, as President John F. Kennedy once said, a nation reveals itself not only by the men and women it produces, but also by the men and women it honors, the men and women it remembers. And ladies and gentlemen, through your acts this morning and throughout this week, the honor that you provide our men and women in uniform today, both past and present, shows the true character of America, the true character of Nebraska, and what makes us all great. And again, I thank you for that. Thank you again for honoring us today. May God bless you all, and may God continue to bless these great United States of America. Thank you.
Thank you, Major General Clinton Crozier, for your words and support. It is now my pleasure and honor to introduce this year's Grand Marshal, Colonel Ellis McClintock. Ellis is a beloved resident of Hillcrest Country Estates Grand Lodge. Another resident, also a veteran, recently said, he is someone that we all can truly be proud of. Ellis is 94, but that does not slow him down. As an avid golfer, he brings the principles of golf into his daily life, saying, after a superbly executed shot, many say, it is better to be lucky than good. He feels that sums up his life during World War II and beyond. He was lucky enough to have survived training and combat missions of the Big War, in addition to over 30 years of total service, including the Korean and Vietnam conflicts. He describes himself as not a hero, but one who was lucky enough to serve with many heroes, many who unfortunately are no longer with us. Ellis joined the United States Army Air Force in October 1942 when he was 20 years old. He earned his wings as an aerial navigator in October of 1943. He completed combat crew training in early 1944 and ferried a brand new B-17G to Europe to join the renowned 390th Bombardment Group in East Anglia, England. Ellis survived the last flight of his 35th combat tour, returned to the ZI, which I found out the ZI is the Zone of the Interior this morning, and entered flight training to become a pilot. After successful completion of this in October 1945, he earned a new set of wings, a dual flight rating, and an opportunity to make a career in the United States Air Force. During his career, Ellis served in Goose Bay, Labrador, Japan, Guam, and Thailand. He flew a whole variety of airplanes and logged over 1,000 hours in his favorite, the Flying Fortress B-17. His World War II B-17G aircraft is replicated in combat-ready status as the centerpiece in the 390th Bombardment Group Memorial Museum in Tucson, Arizona. Its name is I'll Be Around, named for the plane his crew bailed out of June 4th, 1944. Ellis refers to this as his claim to fame. After World War II, Ellis met and married Miss Rhoda Ray Enslow, and together they raised 4 sons, became the grandparents of 4 boys and 4 girls, and the great-grandparents of 8 boys and 3 girls. Of these descendants, 6 have also served in the Air Force. Ellis's son, Bill McClintock, is a retired Bellevue police officer. The family's legacy has been memorialized on a black granite bench displayed in the Strategic Air and Space Museum outside of Omaha, where he is a lifelong member. Ellis spent the remaining 14 years of his career in the Strategic Air Command, retiring from SAC headquarters in 1972 as a colonel. In his career, he earned 4 Air Medals, 1 Distinguished Flying Cross, 2 Legions of Merit, 1 Polish Army Medal, and recently 1 French Legion of Honor. Please welcome Mr. Ellis McClintock to the podium.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and welcome to all of you folks. I'm glad you could be here and glad you could select me to represent the many veterans that have served before me. The 16 million of us that served in World War II, and many, of course, before that and after that, and a lot who continue to serve. Rusty has stole my prepared remarks. But thank you all for being here, and thank you for selecting me to be here, and for allowing my family to be here. Those with us today are Jim, my oldest son, and there's Jim. Jim, like the other 4 boys, all went to various schools during Air Force brats go to school wherever the old man is stationed. And Jim has a record. He set a record. He went to 4 different high schools before he got his diploma. His wife Deanna is here. Deanna's a music teacher, and she taught in this old schoolhouse some 45 years ago. So some of you may remember her. My second son, Phil, is an Air Force veteran, and he lives in Crossville, Tennessee. Made the trip here last night to be here for this event. My grandkids are represented here by Travis and Kimberly from Lincoln, and Matthew and Greg and Chrissy from Omaha. I thought Elise was going to be here from Bellevue. I still have 1 person in Bellevue, but when we came here in 1966 to Bellevue, there were 6 of us. Now there's 34 of us. But we only have one that still lives in Bellevue. Bonnie and I moved from Bellevue last year to be at the Hillcrest Grand Lodge. It's not exactly paradise, but it's a great place to live, and for us, it's the right place at the right time. And we heartily recommend it to all retirees, and especially as they get older. Doris said I must say a little bit about my service, even though Rusty has already covered most of it. I grew up on a farm, on a Kansas farm, I was the oldest of 4 boys, and all of us finally served in World War II. I had walked many years behind a plow and a cultivator and decided that I had enough walking, so I signed up to fly. I'd never flown before. I'm not sure I'd even seen an airplane before, but I figured flying an airplane ought to be better than walking. As aviation cadets, the first place we went to was Nashville, Tennessee, to take tests and decide whether we were going to be pilots, navigators, or bombardiers. And although we all qualified for all of those functions, we were assigned, of course, to the job that they needed, the service, the needs of the service is the way it was described. And so I wound up being an aerial navigator. When I graduated from nav school, they assigned me to a 10-man B-17 Flying Fortress crew. And after a couple of months of training, we ferried this brand new B-17 to Prestwick, Scotland. And at Prestwick, we had to leave the airplane, and they assigned us to, as Rusty said, the 390th Bombardment Group, which has, since those days, had an annual reunion almost every year. And they have a museum hangar in Tucson at the Pima Air Museum. And Rusty told me I'd be around is the airplane as a centerpiece, and is an airplane that my kids are all members of and have all tried to visit. And it's a great museum, and I recommend you all make a trip to Pima Air and Space Museum in Tucson. Our combat mission when we got to England was 25 missions, which soon went to 30, and before I finally finished, it was 35. We were good at what we did, but like we always say, you got to be lucky to survive a war. We had 13 50 caliber machine guns aboard that B-17, and 8 of us were gunners. And we had good flight top cover to protect us from the enemy fighters. So our main problem, our main hazard was anti-aircraft fire, which was very, very accurate. We tried to avoid these centers where the guns were proficient, but invariably you had no choice about whether you got shot or not. Many times we came back with holes in the airplane, and twice we came back on 2 engines. Lucky again to be alive. And that's why I always say it's better to be lucky than good. Our 390 bomb group served in England for 2 years before the end of the war, and they wore out or used up 269 B-17s. And that includes, of course, those that were shot down and those that were worn out and the ones that we wrecked. We lost 1,360 crew members. 629 of them were killed in action, and 731 were prisoners of war. My crew of 10 men had 2 killed in action, and 4 of us were seriously injured. I finished up my tour in October of '44, and I was home for Christmas, and soon after that, I was in pilot training. The big war was over by the time I got my new wings, but so we were given the choice of separating from the service or continuing to serve. Easy choice. Now that they'd taught me to fly airplanes, I wasn't going back to the farm. Thus, I signed up to make Air Force flying my 30-year career, and I retired from SAC headquarters almost exactly 44 years ago today. Since my retirement, I joined in helping promote the memory of our veterans, and you know, a grateful public has built a lot of memorials and museums throughout the United States and even in England. The American Air Museum in England is a great one to visit. On the wall at the entry wall to the museum are the names of all of the Air Force veterans who died during World War II. I visited there for the grand opening and checked to see that my crew members were there, and they are. The World War II Museum in New Orleans is a great one to visit. Just the film that Tom Hanks documented the film for World War II veterans, and the film itself is a great one to visit. And of course, our local SAC, Strategic Air Command and Aerospace Museum, the new name, is a great one of the best, and certainly is a great memorial to us Air Force guys and especially us SAC veterans. That concludes my trip down memory lane. Thanks for listening, and always remember and never forget our veterans. Thank you.
This has been a great breakfast. Thank you to our host and friend, Sac Federal Credit Union, for this morning's guest speaker and this morning's guest speakers. Thank you all for attending. Please notice on the back side of your programs the additional members of the business community who are supporting today's events. The Veterans Parade does not happen without the support of our business community, the City of Bellevue, and Offutt Air Force Base. Before we leave, there is one final tradition, the annual reading of In Flanders Fields. Would Mayor Rita Sanders please join me at the podium and lead us in the reading?
Flanders Field, north of France, was the scene of one of the bloodiest battles of World War I. One of the few things said to have survived bloodshed was the poppy. John McCrae, a Canadian doctor serving on the battlefield, wrote this poem after treating the battle wounded and burying the dead. Would you please pick up your program, rise, and recite along with me? In Flanders fields, the poppies blow, between the crosses, row by row, that mark our place, and in the sky, the larks still bravely singing fly. Scarce head amid the guns below, we are the dead, short days ago. We lived, felt dawn, saw sunset glow. Loved and were loved, and now we lie in Flanders field. Take up your quarrel with the foe, to you from falling hands we throw. The torch be yours to hold it high, if we break faith with us who die. We shall not sleep, though poppies grow, in Flanders fields. Thank you for attending this morning the Dignitary Breakfast. Thank you to the Bellevue Chamber of Commerce, Bellevue Public School, and all of our sponsors, City of Bellevue, and our very own Joe Mangiamelli, who has joined us as also an Army veteran. God bless you for attending. God bless our veterans, and God bless America. Thank you.